What the f? Is anybody really surprised? Well, I'll tell you what. This air filter is very deceiving because we most certainly did get water up through the air intake tube here. My God, would you look at that? That is not good. I just wonder how much crap went down through the intake. And I mean, now just by seeing this, now this is a plugs out job, which is all kinds of fun at the back of this engine. Okay, I didn't have the camera going. I just pulled the throttle body. You can see there's, oh God, this is worse than I thought. I wish I got it on video, but a sea of water literally came pouring out as soon as I undid the throttle body. The reason I undid it is because it's frozen shut. You can see all this crap that made it through. I'm not so sure about this engine anymore. Crazy the dipstick looks as clean as it does. As you can see, this thing might be locked up solid. And this is not an engine bay. It's very friendly to work on. I mean, I'll see what I can do with this thing, but this might be a cradle drop, engine out, new drivetrain. It's a lot of work, but remember, $30,000 coach builder's car. There's a lot of water in that intake. Intake definitely has to come off, which is not that big of a deal on a North Star. It's not as bad as people make it out to be. I remember the last time I did one, it was not a big deal. And I think I'm there. I think I'm ready to pull this thing. I had to pull the fuel rail, which is, I mean, fortunately these injectors came right out without any type of fight. So you just got 4 10mm nuts that hold the fuel rail down. This was also bolted down with the fuel rail. Unplugged all the connectors. Before I did all that, I blew out any crap that was on top of the intake so it wouldn't fall into the cylinders. I just started removing the intake. You can see just how much water is pouring out of it. Wow. Oh, it feels much heavier than a intake should on one of these. It's full of water. Oh, no! Oh! Look at this. Can you see? Oh! Oh! Just when I thought it was done, this thing is completely full of water. Holy smokes. Now I'm covered in Hurricane Ian floodwater. Oh, nice. And obviously it'd be wise of me to put a new starter in. And people make such a big deal out of this. Oh, North Star, you gotta pull the intake. It's so friggin' easy. This took like 10 minutes. Fuel rail, boom. A couple other things, boom. Done, it comes out. That's it. I don't know why people make such a big deal out of doing a starter on one of these. You can see we've got water in the valves. You can see even the valves are rusty on this side. It's not looking good, folks. It's not looking good. I'm gonna go ahead and get cleaning in here. I mean, I don't know how far I'm going with this thing tonight. Everything I'm seeing is bad. I might just pull these plugs out quick and see what the plugs look like and see if I can get a look down in the cylinders. These are open. I couldn't even tell before because there was so much water in there. The cylinder is just completely full of water. And you can see all this water everywhere. And on me, well, let me show you where that's coming from. Now, obviously, the way to get the water out of the cylinders is to pull the plugs and either rotate it by hand or crank it over, you know, with the ignition, which is never going to happen in this car with the electronics, but let me just show you. like a day at the beach. You know, I always like to be optimistic, and I've revived some engines that should never have been revived, but this thing has been full of salt water now since September. It's now January going on February. It's probably locked up. It's probably got corrosion all over the cylinder walls. It's probably junk, but I got nothing to lose in trying. I think this side was fairly dry, but I mean, really, if I were to rotate this by hand, the valves would open and close, let that water down in the cylinders, and if I have the plugs out, I'll just shoot it right out. But this was just more of a curiosity thing. See if I could get a little taste of Hurricane Ian. I certainly smell it. All right, I'm gonna pull a few plugs here. I may just drain the oil tonight too, just to really get a gauge on how bad things are. Okay, so I pulled the front 4 plugs, the easy ones. Came right out with no problem. You can see there's some old anti-seize on there, which probably contributed to that. So the first 3 I pulled out look good, right? Obviously, when you look at threads and the porcelain, the spark plug, because that all saw water, doesn't look too good there. The threads actually don't look that bad. But just a typical, you know, used plug. Not horrible, not horribly fouled, not covered in anything you wouldn't want to see. Just an older plug. Same with this one. Same with this one. But then we get to this guy here. Uh-oh. That same kind of gooey salt, whatever it is, that we saw in the intake tubing, and even here, you can see some all over that plug. So the spark plug condition corroborates with what cylinders have, as you'd expect, what cylinders have water in them. So I blew out the first 3 here, and they're dry. Nothing came shooting out. And I put the sprayer here on this cylinder, and water started shooting out here from the valve side. So definitely still water in that cylinder, and that again would explain why the spark plug looks the way it does. Valves are open on this cylinder and this cylinder. The rest were shut. So we got 2 cylinders that are potentially locked up. Dry. 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 You can hear the water. You probably can't over the sound of the air gun, but you can hear the water gushing around in that cylinder as I blow the air in. There's your evidence. I'm actually enjoying this for the content aspect alone. I still have a sense of optimism with this engine. What will really tell it for me is what comes out of the oil pan. Let me go ahead and pull that drain plug here, and we'll see what comes out. Got the drain plug loose. I already broke it loose. Now just taking it out by hand. I don't think there's gonna be water. You can already see it, but I don't think there's gonna be too much. But let's see. I could be wrong. Water, water, water. Plug's still in. Just want to get a real good idea of what's going to come out here. Good, screw it. Water, water, oil. Well, watery oil. Okay, I've seen a lot worse. I probably should have got that plug. Hold on. And now we just got straight oil. So not too bad. Probably had half a quart of water in there.
1 week later.
Okay, it's been about a week since I touched this. Basically, the day after I got it in was the last time I worked on this car. It's been about a week since then. What I've done today so far off camera is I washed the hell out of the exterior, and I once again washed out the inside, and I also removed any of that bubbling paint that I was showing you guys before. Look at how beautiful this thing cleaned up. Beautiful. I did the wheels. I got in there and cleaned them really well with some steel wool. Just water spots on there now, but the chrome cleaned up perfect. There was corrosion starting on each wheel, and that's why I wanted to make sure I cleaned them up before that actually turned into pitting. And no pitting. I got these nice and clean just in time. Whole vehicle, paint, everything, beautiful. You can see I have not done the engine bay yet because I'm still working in here. So you saw where I left off. I pulled out the front 4 plugs. I'm gonna get the rear plugs out. I'll blow out the back cylinders. And also pulling those rear plugs because I'm gonna try to turn this engine over by hand. Those of you who own a North Star or whoever have owned a North Star will know that this is the official North Star servicing position. And so I've got all the rear plugs. I'm taking the 4th one out now. This cylinder here, this one, there was so much sand down in the spark plug well that I couldn't get to the head on the spark plug. And so what I had to do was I had to blow it out with my air compressor, as much sand as I could. Then I had to basically gently tap down the spark plug socket until I could get it seated on the spark plug to take it out. Thankfully I was able to. Let me go ahead and get this 4th plug out. I'll show you what I found in those plugs. Really no different than the ones in the front. And then I'll go ahead and try to rotate this thing by hand. Okay, so I filled the back 4 cylinders. I first blew them out to see if they were like full of water, and they were dry. So as I suspected, the ones with the intake valves closed did not get any water in them, and that's why there was all standing water on top of the valves themselves. So I dumped in some Marvel Mystery Oil into those cylinders. Now I've got the fender liner off here. This is my best point of access for the crank pulley. As you can see, just too tight to try to reach one down. So I popped that off. And this will also give me an opportunity to spray up in here and clean all this too. You can see all the salt and sand. And this is something I talk about a lot. This is what kills a lot of GM cars. Always good to take your fender liner out every once in a while and clean out. I mean, just look at, and this obviously is full of salt water because of the flood. So actually on this one, all right, I'll give GM credit. On the older cars, they didn't do this, but you can see here that they left an area for water to drain out. However, you can see how wet all that was, and it's just sitting in here. It would cause all this to start rusting. So not a bad idea to check in here every once in a while and clean that out. So I haven't tried to rotate the engine yet, but I'm ready. That thing didn't budge an inch. That's not good. And you can't use an impact wrench. No, that's a big no-no. That could just snap the crankshaft, and the engine might be doomed anyway. But it's strange to me because there really wasn't that. There was a little bit of water in 2 cylinders. The R6 didn't have any water. The oil pan didn't have much water in it. I'm surprised it's so locked up. I'm gonna try some more, and my next move would be to just let that Marvel Mystery Oil sit in here even longer. Try again another time. All right, so I decided, let me pop the serpentine belt off and make sure that there's not any other accessory pulleys, especially because of the salt, that are locked up. That could be making it that much harder to turn this crank pulley. Well, here we have our neighbor right next door, AC compressor. You can see as I mess with it, how I'm getting it to rotate, but that was stuck stuck really bad. I already messed with it quite a bit just to get it before I even turned the camera on. So that certainly could have played a role. Maybe I'm being a little optimistic, but all right, folks, well, I've tried a few more times. I'm gonna go ahead and stop for now. There's no urgency in getting this project done. Even if I got this engine rotating free tonight, I don't have my parts car for the interior and the electronics and all that stuff. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to absolutely top off. I mean, granted, they're all pretty much almost full, every cylinder all the way with Marvel Mystery Oil, and let this thing sit for another, I don't know, 2-3 days at least. I got other projects to work on anyway. Come back to it and try it again.
Many months later.
Okay, so as you can probably tell by all the cobwebs everywhere, it's been at least a few months since I last tried to turn this engine by hand. Of course, all the cylinders are full. I think on this one I put Marvel Mystery Oil. Sometimes I'll just use ATF. Basically whatever I have laying around, it's pretty much all the same. But all the cylinders have been saturated with oil now for months, and I'm gonna try today again to see if I can get this engine to rotate. So let's see what happens. I'm not highly optimistic, but you just never know. So here we go. I feel like I'm almost turning the crank bolt instead of the pulley, which we don't want. I don't want to snap that bolt or strip it out. Maybe let me go try going the other way here, just in case I tighten that too much. Oh man, that's not good. That is not good. All right, folks, that's not good. I'm gonna, without wasting too much memory on my phone, I'm gonna do several more tries here, reverse direction and well, clockwise, counterclockwise. Again, I'm being careful because I can let this thing soak for another few months versus right now stripping or snapping the crank bolt, and then it's game over at that point. So I'll get back to you guys in a minute, but if this ends up being the end of this part because I can't get this thing to rotate, I will show you something I do have on the bright side. As you can see, I still have this thing exactly as I left it after the disassembly. Plugs out. I've given it several more tries and I still, hey, been looking for this extension. That was actually how I was shifting this thing, I remember now. So what now for this car? I mean, again, it's been probably more than 2 months, probably been 3 or 4 months since I filmed all that footage of me taking the plugs out and everything and filling the cylinders up. And I wanted to give it some time. I've had other projects I've been busy with, so I figured, hey, more time is a good thing to really let those cylinders soak. But as you guys saw, it's practically welded stuck. This thing is just totally stuck. All I'm really doing is turning the crank bolt back and forth ever so slightly, either really tight or back to just being tight. Let me show you what the good news is right now. Okay, so here is that special something. The good news in this situation that I was referring to just a minute ago. Now, I always try to brace for the worst and hope for the best, but the reality is I kind of figured that engine would probably be locked up solid for good on the 06 DTS Coach Builder's car. So, pretty much from the moment I brought that car home, as I said in part one, I was already looking for a parts car. Not just for a drivetrain, but also for the interior, electronics, and other bits. And so I introduced to you this beautiful 2010 DTS with just 50,000 miles. Actually, I think it's slightly less. I think it's maybe a little bit under 50. I can't remember. But you can see this is an absolutely beautiful car. Beautiful color, beautiful condition. Well, some of you are probably already saying, Al, you're not going to kill this DTS, are you? This thing's beautiful. Well, let me show you the problem. So you can see, unfortunately, this poor car was in quite the accident. I got it from Copart, as you can see on the windshield where the driver hit his head. I got it really cheap. The issue I was having, I bought the 06 DTS back in January, the Coach Builder's car. Here we are in May. I got this car in late April. And the issue I was having in trying to buy a parts car was not that there was a lack of DTSs to bid on. There were plenty of them. I bid on multiple every week, but they always go for a ton of money. Even ones that didn't run, ones that had severe quarter panel damage where it would be probably not even worth fixing the car, they went for well over $1,000 bid. Well, this one came along, and just my luck, this ended up being at my local Copart, and I got it for a $300 winning bid. It was a non-run, said no keys on the windshield, but there were keys. That wasn't written by Copart, that was written by the police department. This must have been impounded after the accident. It did have keys, and I was able to get it running with the help of my friend Nick. I may show that in a separate video, or I might show it right after this clip. It all depends on how long this video is when I get to this point in editing, but let me just show you real quick. Beautiful North Star engine, fortunately unharmed by the accident. I actually had to pull out this radiator support quite a bit. It was basically touching the valve cover. With a few minor adjustments, we were able to get this thing running, and it runs perfectly. Now, you might be saying, Al, why not fix this car? It looks really nice besides what happened here. The damage is pretty severe. There is frame damage as well. It just really, in my opinion, would take too much to fix this car. The amount of time and money I'd have invested in fixing this thing, be better off buying another one, in my opinion. I think it serves best as a parts car. Just under 50,000 miles. Now, here's the interior. One problem with this interior that I didn't notice until I'd already bid on it, but now I've actually grown to like it in some respects, it's the base interior. It doesn't have the perforated leather like my Coach Builder's one does, but the perforated leather in these era GMs, it always tears real easy. Even my Coach Builder's car, you saw the bottom seat was all tore up. I don't think the Hurricane did that. I think it just happened even at around 50,000 miles, which is what I think that car has based on the Carfax. So you can see these seats have fared a lot better because they don't have that perforation in them, and they're much more comfortable than the other seats. The only thing I lose, of course, is the cooled seat function. This might not even have heated seats either, to be honest. No, because it would be on the door, but definitely don't need heated seats here in Florida. And while the cooled seats are nice, I can certainly live without them. You can see there the mileage. These seats are super comfortable. I've sat in non-flooded DTSs of this era with the perforated seats, and it's the same thing with the previous generation DeVille, the 2000 to 2005. The base seats are way more comfortable for whatever reason. Even though they don't look as nice, they're way more comfortable, and comfort is the name of the game, of course, being a Cadillac lover. You can also see that this car has a center console shift, whereas mine was a column shift. I will obviously end up switching this over to my car as well with the dashboard and everything else. But I got lucky, she runs great, same mileage as the flood car, so be putting a 50,000 mile engine into a 50,000 mile car. I like that. I prefer them to be matching or lower. And I just want to reiterate one more time, because I'm sure some people are going to say, Al, it's crazy that you're doing all this work on a Cadillac DTS. But just remember, I'm only doing this because of what it is. Coach Builder's limited car Very rare, very expensive to buy one used. You can't bring them a 2006 DTS now and ask them to convert it. They won't do it. They're doing modern cars now. If you want one of these, there's not that many out there. They fetch a premium. It's a lot of labor, but I enjoy this stuff. Obviously, there's times where it gets frustrating, but overall, I enjoy these projects. And when I'm done, again, a lot of labor, but not a lot of money, because this car out the door was 500 bucks. The flood car itself was under 1,000. So for figure all said and done, under 2 grand, I'm gonna have a mint Coach Builders Limited sedan. I'm still very excited about this. It does suck that the engine is locked up still on the 06 and probably forever will be. But again, kind of saw it coming. That's why I got this thing. It may seem like that's 2 L's in a row, the black Elante, and now this car is still being locked up, but maybe 3 is the magic number. So thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned. Keep an eye out for the next one. Okay, so I've got Nick here with me. Nick, say hi.
Hello.
And Nick plugged in his Autel to the donor car here for the 06 Flood DTS. We've got a circuitry issue between the fuse box and the PCM. And we think it's because the radiator and the radiator support are pushed into the harness. So we need to get access to that.
Hooked on in the most secure way. Safety light.
Any better?
I mean, Al, that's pretty freaking good.
That's as good as we're gonna get. All right, Nick, so you want to tell them what just happened? Who was right?
You were correct, Al.
Big Al isn't always dumb, right?
Not always.
I've got the brain juice right
That's
here.
right. It was flowing, creativity, exactly.
No, I mean, I only suggested this because it's happened to me before in a similar circumstance. So basically, we plugged that code in online that popped up on Nick's Autel, and it said that should be a broken wire somewhere between the fuse box and the PCM.
Yep.
Related to ignition.
Yep.
And so Nick, obviously doing a proper diagnosis, was thinking, okay, you know, that's why we yanked this radiator support out so we could inspect the harness. You know, the problem is the harness loops all throughout here. It's a nightmare to get to it. But he was thinking, let's just snip the wire and run a new wire. Yep. Because this car obviously is not being fixed. It's just to get it running enough that I can move it around the property until I use the parts from it. I said, hey, Nick, you know, before we do that, before we go cutting wires, because, you know, being that it is a flood car, all this is going into, I'd rather use this harness, being that, of course, if it's not damaged, it has all this looming on it. And, you know, this, while this was originally touching against the harness and pushing against the block, it wasn't like really pushing it, it was just touching it. So I said, geez, Nick, before we cut that wire, you know, one of the issues we were having, and it might have been the issue all along, or it could have just been, I was thinking that maybe a wire was just getting pinched from the pressure of this plastic here on the fan. Pinched just enough that maybe it was affecting the current. But, you know, Nick said, yeah, screw it, you know, let's...
Why do more work? Fire it up.
And see what happens. So what happened, Nick?
Well, it was probably the result that everybody was hoping to hear.
I honestly, I wasn't that optimistic, but go ahead.
3, 2, 1. It's called the sound of internal combustion engine. Sucking air because the vacuum. It runs. It's what we wanted. Just sucking air in because it's got a huge...
We'll button that all back up, but she's a runner.
This thing's ready to go on the road, dude.
Well, we are going to drive it because I do want... It's in our way. All right, gentlemen, take a look. We got her running. Hold on, let's show that odometer. Oop. A couple warning lights. 49,775. How does she run, Nick?
Smooth as glass.
Like a dream. Does everything work? And she drives like a dream. Doesn't have headlights, but
Details.
don't worry about all those noises.
Yo, this thing goes.
Oh yeah, well these are the highest horsepower North Stars, like 315 or more. So yeah, what do you think? We'll have this fixed by the end of the weekend. Be driving it.
This thing's ready to go to Fort Lauderdale in a couple hours. We'll be ready to go.